Welcome back to Junction 119. This is Kellen,
This is Casen.
and it feels like we were just here, dude. We had
Yeah.
to kind of stagger the recording this week, and you just got our last show on the 5th, and we're recording this on the 9th to go out on the 10th. So less than 5 days. I was actually thinking it feels a little bit like when we did the show, the like breaking news show when you won the
Mm,
Stanley Cup, Casen.
yeah.
It was a bit more like that. Some of the podcasts that we like that go in intervals of like 3 times a week. Which, to be honest, unless you're doing this full time, I can't imagine doing a podcast that often during a week.
Yeah, I mean that's only full time would be the only way you do that.
Regardless, we're into the playoffs now. It's going to be a mostly football show again today. Essentially the same lineup as our last show. We're gonna open things by talking about the college football national championship. Of course, we're going to talk about the bracket. The NFL playoffs are set. Everything is ready to go, and as we roll into Super Wild Card weekend, and of course we'll bring you some of the weeks, and maybe we'll chime in on some other news and stuff that's come out today, among other things. Case, and you about ready? We can dive into the
Yeah.
national championship game. This is probably one of those ideal times where we're talking about it the day after, literally the afternoon after it happened.
Yeah, we can get
Where
into
uh
that.
where I'll just
Mm,
go ahead and just say the final score: your Michigan Wolverines, your University of Michigan Wolverines, are your national champions for the 2023 season, defeating the University of Washington 34-13. We sat here a handful of days ago and both made solid cases that Washington was going to win this game. And I'll just go ahead and just preface my thoughts by it became pretty apparent pretty early on in this game last night that was most likely not going to happen.
yeah.
Uh, I
Yeah.
have the box score pulled up here. I was able to watch the whole game. It like I will say I don't know if necessarily the final score. This was a weird game because
Mm,
it was one of those situations where out of the gate it looked like Washington wasn't going to be able to contain the rushing attack at all, and I literally declared the game over to multiple people. When it was sitting at 14-3. Um, but Washington was able to kind of take that and absorb it a bit. They started to get then they were able to get on the board their one touchdown in the second quarter. But what was weird was I don't know about you, Kason, but momentum never for me ever felt like it wasn't in Michigan's favor in this whole game. Like even when it sat, I'm skipping ahead, but even when it sat at a 7 point deficit in the at the actually in the fourth quarter, it still just felt like, yeah, but Michigan's got this. Like it just never felt like Washington could ever string good things together from the very beginning.
yeah. So I'll begin by saying this was definitely probably one of the worst games Michael Penix Jr. had. Um A lot of that had to do with, great secondary coverage by Michigan, the great pass rush by Michigan to make him uncomfortable. So he definitely had not gotten that type of experience against Texas. But I mean, I think a lot of it was the pressure in his face. I mean, there were a couple big plays where he had guys open and he was just missing.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was way off target. And if a couple of those would have hit, it would have been a kind of a different story. So
Including one to your boy Ramadunze in the second quarter, which
yeah, yeah.
in hindsight probably would have been a touchdown if he caught it.
I
Um,
I I mean I've heard other people sort of make this point too, but I also felt it at the time was there was that play where Adunze completely got he shook off the defense. They were a little confused and misaligned, and he was open when he absolutely should not have been. And Penix just completely missed him, and that felt like that was the game. I mean, there
yeah,
was it was momentum was sort of was swinging back in their favor. That they needed a huge a huge shot downfield, and a huge touchdown like that would have been incredible for their momentum. But Yeah, I mean, it felt like it felt like Michigan kind of had the game in hand the whole time, except for them just refusing to put it away. Like the for some reason, Washington continued to try and establish the run, even though Dylan Johnson, who got injured at the very end of the Sugar Bowl, he was trying to run and they kept trying to run, even though that just was not working.
Mm-hmm.
And Michigan, despite multiple very long touchdown runs from Donovan Edwards, they kept trying to make passing happen and that just was not working.
Yeah,
And so it was like
eh,
both teams refused to do what they were good at and they kept trying to establish the other phase of the game
yeah,
and it just was not working.
it's almost like the coaching staffs were like overthinking the situation. Like when
Yeah.
I'm with you. I couldn't really understand why Michigan like stopped running middle of the game, and the second that they went back to it late in the game, they put it away. You know, they scored twice.
Yeah.
They ended up scoring a couple of touchdowns in the fourth quarter. One was mainly because of the interception, which essentially ended the game.
Well, it was weird because there was a portion of the game where they really only ran, and Washington was able to basically just sell out for the run for every single play,
mhm.
and then I mean probably a creative coaching decision that thankfully worked out for them because they didn't get into a point where it mattered, but they were able to basically just completely sell out for the run for multiple drives,
Mhm.
and then eventually fake it, hit the deep shot downfield, and then that ended up working.
Yep.
And so that was a coaching decision that I mean, hat off to Tro Moore. And so I mean, they played the game that they wanted to play, and they didn't let Washington really get back into it.
No, and it just
In
like I
in a
said,
way that was actually threatening.
they weren't able to really string anything together. And at no point, it just there was the one point I think if Washington had found a way to score when they were down 7 and we were going into the back end of the fourth quarter at
If they would
2020,
have been able to
if
be tied, yeah.
yes, that it would have felt like, and I thought, well, this could happen. I mean, I was thinking there is a possibility, but even then, it just felt like the second Michigan needed to put their foot back down on the gas, they did it, and they did it immediately. And it was just
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah.
okay, so we're not real. So out of these 3 games, this is decidedly the worst one, right? But I thought we were about to get another complete blowout in the first quarter. I think a lot of people did. Um, that is not what happened. And I will say this: Washington did not look like they didn't belong. They looked like a team that was 14-0, that was also playing a team 14-0, and the better team won at the end of the day.
I think my takeaway from this is probably the fact that the best team this year was Georgia.
Mm.
Like, I mean, it- Washington looked like they belonged because Michigan was playing relatively sloppy for half that game.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, JJ didn't look incredibly good either. I mean, he was missing like when they were trying to pass it, he was missing passes.
Yeah.
I mean, he was 10 for 18, so they didn't really pass it a ton.
No, they didn't.
But like when they did, sometimes some of them were pretty off target. And it's just like it was a relatively sloppy game from both sides that sort of leveled it out to the point where it just depended on who had the bigger defensive front. Like that was really what it was.
My favorite stat
And
line of the week might be that one from Donovan Edwards: 6 carries, 104 yards, 2 touchdowns.
yeah, yeah,
Have a day, young man. That
yeah,
I as for me, I think I it's hard to say because this is a year where from the very beginning, because of the parity and the transfer portal and everything we've talked about over the course of this season, the 12-team playoff would have looked really cool this year, huh? And who's to
yeah,
say that if given a second chance, Georgia wouldn't have taken that loss in the SEC championship game and would have battled their way through that 12-team playoff? They they would have been one of the teams. They wouldn't have been one of the 4 buys, but they would have been right outside of that. And
yeah.
so they would have been kind of that second tier, that 5-6 range. So based on the new format, yeah, I mean, who's to say that that couldn't have happened? Talent wise, that's probably the case. But the way that formatting happens, it just didn't fall that way. And ultimately, yeah, I mean, I will say this, Casen, because I've been thinking about this since we talked about it a week ago. That Alabama team was still able to beat that Georgia team when it came right down to it. So, hence why they were in the game. And then, they lost to Michigan. Michigan was able to make that happen. Am I inclined to think that the Michigan team would have beaten Georgia as well? I like to lean that way. I mean, we'll never know, but I like to lean that way. However, I where I'm going with this word vomit is just that Georgia looked the way they look because they were playing the Florida State team that they played. I really, I really think that Georgia wouldn't have looked that good if they were playing any of those other teams above them.
I mean, that's true,
That's
but
why I can't sit here and
think,
agree that they're the best team this
yeah,
year. The best team this year, I
yeah,
think, really was top to bottom Michigan. But you know,
um, yeah. I mean, that's a fair argument to make. It's
that
just
said, go ahead.
I don't think I just don't think that. Um, I mean, I guess really the answer is that there like everybody this year was like really up and down and sloppy at times. I mean, top to bottom, and like Georgia did struggle with some pretty average teams
Right.
at times. So yeah, I think it just comes down
Everyone,
to the
I mean,
fact that this was a very even year across the board.
your take, our take most of the year was that Georgia is kind of mid, and they're just by default the number one best team. Whereas, now with what you're saying, your tone's kind of changed a bit. Maybe yours was always that way, but saying that maybe Georgia was the best team, I don't know. It's hard to say, but I do like this idea that going
Yeah.
forward, we'll be able to kind of put this to bed with more matchups. I will say this too. The longer you make a football season, the more ups and downs you're going to get simply because of the nature of the game and just how tough it is, the toll it takes. Like,
Hmm.
look at the NFL. That's been the story of this league ever since they made it 17 games. There are times when they don't even look like they are. There are times when it literally looks like teams are taking weeks off, and it's because I think mentally they are. It's like, look, we don't have to win this week. Whatever. They come out, get destroyed in the NFL. The other team's on. And it's like, where's this team been? I mean, that whole middle stretch of the season for the 49ers, you know? So I don't know. I think that's part of it too. Just having played as well. I just think
Yeah.
that I really think you're going to start to see, especially with a 12-team playoff, I think you're really going to start to see it like as a second season because that's how you're going to have to prepare for it. Like there's the regular season to get through and win your conference, whatever. Now you got the second season, which is this 12-team playoff gauntlet, So, which is what, 3 to 4 more games, 4 more games at
Hmm.
most, 3 more games for the eventual victors. So it's hard to see, but nonetheless, I wanted to kind of shift and ask you another question. John Harbaugh, or Jim Harbaugh, wins. The whole Harbaughs were there. That was like part of the story last
Yeah.
night. The entire Harbaugh family. Shout out to their dad Jack because he's a BG guy, and played for Deutsche Perry.
Hmm.
And really both of his parents seem great. That being said, um, what do you think this does for his legacy? Because there was a thing I forgot to bring up last week about this Michigan team. This Michigan team really, really made me think of like the Patriots the year that Tom Brady got suspended for Deflategate. In that when he came back, the whole team was motivated to just lay waste to the NFL on their way to like the Super Bowl. And I want to say that year they lost, but one of those 2 years flanking that year they won it. I don't remember,
Yeah. So
but real quick, pulling it back, I think Michigan, this team, drew from the ire that Jim Harbaugh received this year. The suspensions from the beginning and then the middle, the back end of the year. You can argue that their biggest wins down the stretch, he wasn't even there for until until the Big Ten championship game and the playoff stuff.
yeah, I mean Harbaugh missed half the season.
Yeah,
I mean he was suspended 3 games twice.
yeah.
So
I think it says something about the rest of that coaching staff too. They're
mhm.
chock full of dudes who absolutely were able to get it done in his absence and stuff like that. But I was really thinking about it. I was like, the last great head coach, I even pulled it up here in Michigan history. Lloyd Carr was great. He's easily the best one since then. If you don't count Rich Rodriguez and Brady Hoke, who did nothing.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and now you
yeah,
got Harbaugh,
here's the thing.
and it's like this feels like the end, the culmination of this arc of the last like what 5 years he's been there.
Mhm. 8, 7, 8.
7 or 8 now, actually. Yeah, it's longer than
Um,
that. So yeah.
um, yeah. So I mean that's a really great point of what you said about Tom Brady because another Michigan guy,
Oh, this is like his
and
eighth or
it
ninth season. Sorry, yeah, he got there in 15.
the
Been there a long time.
the the really interesting thing is that when you kind of think about sort of the Belichickian Patriot way situation, a lot of that was driven by Tom and the way Tom handled being the quarterback. And the sort of theme with that is sort of the Michigan man mentality of the team,
Mm,
the team. And so it, it's definitely very, I guess you could say, congruent with the way that this season was handled by Michigan and the Harbaugh stuff.
definitely.
And so I think that there's a very relatable situation with that. And I think that that this would be the best way for him to just leave, because I think everybody knows he doesn't like the way that college is going. I mean, with clearly with the way that the suspensions were handled, he doesn't get along with the NCAA, and so I think he's been trying to get out forever, and so I think that like this would be the best way to go, because I mean, a lot of people don't think they're going to be very good next year because everybody's leaving, and I would imagine that staff will be picked apart as well. And
Even if
so
Harbaugh stuck around, that would
even
probably
if he was
happen.
still there, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that definitely, if he wants to leave, this would be his best chance to just go, to the Raiders or Chargers or whoever wants him.
Mm.
Um, and then they can move on and he fulfilled what he came there to do. I mean, it
That's
was
that's what I'm getting at.
probably
Yeah.
it was 7 years later than I think a lot of alumni wanted him to do it, but he stuck with it, and he was almost fired several times.
Yeah,
But
I was gonna say they stuck with him too. That's like the other
yeah,
thing. They
yeah,
didn't, they were probably able to kind of stave off the, loud
yeah.
members of their, massive fan base and alumni base and stuck with him to be able to do it. I mean, I'll be honest with you, a good 4 or 5 years ago, I never thought that we'd see this. There were
Yeah,
so many
yeah.
times,
I
like
mean,
even a year or
I
two
I
ago, I was
hope
like, Michigan's never going to do this under
I
Harbaugh.
I hope that that Connor Stallions gets a ring. I hope that he's recognized as team MVP. Uh,
What do you have to say as far as that whole storyline in relation to now they actually went and won the national championship? I mean, do you think it's tainted? Do you not?
I I think of this like the Astros thing, where
Mm,
like this is the best I can equate it to, where it was like, yeah, like they were cheating, but also like why? Like you really didn't have to.
yeah, yeah,
Was like you were cheating to win by 50 when you could have just not cheated and won by 20. Like, what is the point of this?
yeah. It's
Like
yeah,
it felt like completely unnecessary. Like I guess at least this year. Like I think it makes a ton of difference if you go back and think the previous years, because if you think back on like the very close victories they had against the CJ Stroud Ohio State teams the
yeah.
last 2 years, that is where the difference comes into play going back. This year they just flat out had the better team because the players were better, they were developed like they did, and they were experienced having been to the playoff the last 2 years.
And again,
So
the added motivation with what was going on. So
yeah, and so it's just the team, like they had the team, but the last 2 years of cheating got them there. So it's just sort of like, I don't know. I mean,
well, the other
maybe it's other things talking to me, but I'll be surprised if we're sitting here this time next year and this win still counts. Like,
mm,
I mean, to be perfectly honest, like,
right.
I
I've heard
mean,
multiple people talking about that, and
like, cool. I mean, celebrate the win, but like, it's gonna be gone in a year.
here's always been my response to that. You can vacate wins all you want. They won the national championship. Like
I mean,
in the
the
long
only
run of
thing,
history, in the long run of history, I don't care that it was taken away from him. Joe, Reggie Bush was like the greatest college running back I've ever seen, and it doesn't change anything he did or the legacy that he has, in my opinion. It just changes the way you can publicly discuss it and
well,
deal with it going forward. That would be the
yeah,
case with this. At the end of the day, Michigan still won it this year. No one else would have won it. It's not one of those things where retroactively, like, say they vacated it. What? They're going to give it to Washington on the other side? No, we haven't seen that happen because those programs went off and are like, no, we didn't win it. Because at the end of the day, no, you didn't win it. So
yeah, yeah. So
so they can not count it all they want, but they won
the
it.
only thing, the actually, I mean, honestly, I'm not even. I take that back. I don't even know if they will do that, because for anybody who doesn't know, the new president of the NCAA is former Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, who, Massachusetts guy, Patriots fan, I'm assuming, very interesting relationship with cheating scandals. He
Oh
was
well,
probably pounding the table for the
that's a little
Deflate
bit
Gate stuff.
that's a little bit of a
So
that's a little bit of a stretch, Casen. But
I'm just,
I mean,
I would not be surprised if he doesn't have a hard stance against this because of the whole, just
well,
because of his opinions. That's
my
all I'm saying.
right, and my big thing is the biggest thing you can do is suspend him when you suspended him during the season, because the reason let me get to the core of something else. Vacating wins does nothing to actually discipline anyone. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, no one's actually disciplined in any way, shape, or form. No one's affected. Legacies aren't really taking a hit. Like, that was that back, in the 80s and 90s and stuff. That was one of those things they always try to push, like, oh, this affects their legacy. I'm like, no, it doesn't, because they still won all those games. Like, in the history books that we will know what happened. It's like, oh, they won and then it was vacated. Oh, but they won, and so that's why I think whenever they suspended him, like, and we talked about it, I don't want to rehash the story, but it's like they chose to do the best and most immediate thing they can do right now to suspend and affect them right now. It's sort of like when you take away a team's draft picks for something versus finding, like we talked about last week, like finding the owner or doing something. Like, you want to tangibly do something that makes them feel the discipline now, in the here and now. And
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
and I guess the only thing you really say about it is like, look, like you didn't have your head coach for 6 out of the 15 games,
Right.
and you won all of them. So
Right.
I
Right.
guess shout out to that. So
One more shout out I want to give that's sort of relating, because I saw people talking about it last night. Let's talk about how Michigan turned the ball over 4 times this year or something like that, or had four
it
interceptions or
was
something.
it was like four. Yeah, I think they had 4 turnovers, and 3 of them were against Bowling Green.
Bowling Green. That was, a lot of people said that was arguably Michigan's worst game of the year.
I mean, hilariously, yeah.
That's crazy.
I'm still sort of like woke on this, that was maybe a little bit of a handshake deal where it didn't cost Michigan anything to look sort of bad in the first half, and it meant a lot to Scott. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if that was a bit of a handshake deal where
that's funny.
they went a little easy and
Yeah,
didn't
I can see that. But that's funny. It's sort of like when we talk about this stuff, like, retroactively after a team wins a championship. It's sort of like the first year the playoff happened and Ohio State won it, right? In the very first playoff.
Mhm.
Everyone was sitting around at the end of that game. I remember on social media saying, how did Virginia Tech go to Ohio State and beat this team by 14 points? You remember that? Their one loss that year was to Virginia Tech at home. And it's like, how on earth did this team beat this team? Well, they weren't the same team, months ago.
Yeah, I thought that was at Virginia Tech, but either way,
No,
yeah,
no, it was in Ohio Stadium.
yeah.
That was the year they
Yeah,
won the national championship with Urban Meyer.
well,
So
and not to
crazy,
even mention the fact that, like, that was the year that I mean, Braxton Miller was supposed to start. Then it goes to JT Barrett, and then JT Barrett
Right.
gets injured, and so it's Cardale Jones. So you have third string Cardale Jones.
Yeah, Cardell Jones was the team to act. Yeah, he was the guy to go through
Like,
the playoffs. So
I
yeah,
don't know. Yeah, I mean, all I will say is that the then 2015 season of just the dynamic of Cardale being on the roster and being like, well, I guess he's the starter now. That was the funniest dynamic. Like, everybody knew he wasn't that good, but it's just like, he won us a title, so like, what are we gonna do?
it's like he managed 2 games. Can we chill out here? Like, like let's be the adults here and say who the real good quarterback is, and tell everyone else to shut up. But anyway, hats
I
off.
mean, yeah.
In all seriousness, hats off to Michigan. Their first title of any kind since the 90s, like since 97, I believe, when they had a share
Yep.
of it, with Charles Woodson, Heisman winner. And yeah, so they're the champions outright, and they're the final, it's kind of interesting. The 10 years of the 14 playoff began with Ohio State and is bookended by Michigan.
Not only that, the first year of the playoff started with Ohio State over Oregon, and it ended with Michigan over Washington.
Washington, that's right.
So, like, very, very interesting dynamics there.
That is
like,
cool.
two opposite Big Ten, Pac-12,
And
like,
if I'm not mistaken,
rivals.
if I'm not mistaken, that Ohio State team beat Alabama, right? In the semifinal.
They did.
And Michigan beats them, and
Oregon beat Florida State.
Florida State.
I think.
Yep, Jameis. Yep. So yeah. So anyway, As the 14 playoff era goes into the sunset, um, love it for where it was arguably loved, or hate it for whatever reason you hated it or disliked it. But I, for one, liked it for what it is. I stick to what I've said about the BCS system. I still think we should use some sort of AI BCS system, but 14 playoff, or 14 playoff, we're making it 12 next year. It's gonna be something. Before we leave,
Yeah.
before we leave this game, I will say I was a little disappointed we didn't get anything about the video game.
I mean, apparently, yeah, those were all made up rumors
Yeah.
that, I mean, I get that that happens and people ran with it and took it way out of proportion.
Well, it made too much
But
sense. That's why.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I wish that if that was not the case, I wish EA would have just said, "Hey, we sorry guys to disappoint, but like we didn't say this. We don't have anything. We'll get you something soon, but like this was not like they should have come out and said like this was not a real story. Like,
and who knows? Maybe they had a conversation about it internally and said, PR wise, let's just say nothing, because like anything,
yeah,
because in that situation, you'd rather just go past and not say a word from your end, with having covered your bases of, look, we never said a word. Okay. We never, if they were going to do that, they would have said, hey, tune into the national. They would have done the thing they did the teaser. They would have said, like, with the confetti, and they would have said, like, hey, tune into the national championship game for a sneak peek at what we've been working on. Nothing like that.
They would not have just never said anything if there was actually going to be.
And when they didn't say anything going into the day of, it was kind of like, there may be nothing here. But
there's also this guy on Twitter that's like sort of an insider, and he said like Friday he was like, I am hearing nothing that this is not a real rumor. This is not. Yeah.
So anyway, we'll get stuff about that at some point. But yeah, one of those things where the internet is just, if that doesn't tell you how excited everybody is for, any knowledge of this game.
I'm expecting it from a timeline wise. Let me think about this. Madden usually comes out in like September,
August,
or
mid-August,
and it's
back when the NCAA games came out. They usually came out like the last 2 weeks of July. So NCAA football was always out before Madden.
Right.
Like a good
Madden
2
usually
weeks.
comes out in August. I think they announced the cover in like April or May.
I think so, yeah.
So then tracking that, it would make sense. I think maybe the time for the cover announcement would be the combine.
I can see that.
That might track maybe.
Around spring, because that'll be around spring game time.
The draft would be way too late, I think. If it would come out in July, I feel like the draft would be a little late.
What I'm getting at is they have said nothing about the actual release date. It's expected in July of 2024, but that's just because that would track to when the old games used to come out, right? It's hard to say exactly. Maybe they're aiming for an August release. I mean, who knows? But
either way. I mean, I think one would assume July, but I don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Either way, knock on wood, hopefully it comes out this year. Anyway, we'll be here to talk about it when it does, hopefully. You want to shift to Sundays, so to speak, to the last Sunday of the regular season in the NFL. We both have our colors on here today. Casen, before anything is said, I'm going to shake your hand through the monitor. Hey, we made the playoffs. How about that? Like, we both made the playoffs.
We're both very lucky to not be Bungles fans, to be the only team not in the playoffs in this division.
One of my favorite things is the dancing in the moonlight meme with like the three guys and like the guy who's in the front. I don't. Anytime that's used in sports, it's always hilarious, just because of I'm like, yeah, that's perfectly how it is. But it says something that, the worst team in our division this year, you had a lot of bad breaks, went 9-8, and all three of the others made the playoffs, much like I and Dylan thought was going to happen.
Yeah, this was the first division in the league since the 30s to have every member of the division go with a winning record.
Since the 30s, wow.
Yeah, and I think that division, I think, contained like the Bears, the Chicago, or it was the Bears, the Cardinals,
Packers.
Packers.
I'm just guessing. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. It was. I don't remember for sure, but it was like a very old.
I'll look that up later. I'm
Yeah.
curious to know what division that was. What the old teams that were in it. Um, I could even see something like the Portsmouth Spartans or something like that. The Lions' old name, something like ridiculous.
Yeah,
like
it was. Yeah, there was at least one team that didn't exist anymore. I think. I don't know, but
But anyway,
either
either
way.
way, either way, my biggest headline of the week was obviously Steelers beat the Ravens. Like I've said to everybody, doesn't matter the situation, doesn't matter the circumstances or the record on either team. The Steelers just usually have the Ravens number. Uh, it was funny. I was asked by someone going into that game, do you think we have a better chance of winning that game with or without Lamar Jackson playing? And I said, well, it's funny you ask that because usually Lamar is good for a couple of turnovers against the Steelers. His worst games are always played against the black and gold. He'll fumble it or do something ridiculous. So I guess worse if it's Huntley, but
Didn't Huntley beat you last year?
I think Huntley has beaten the Steelers before, I believe. But
Yeah.
but yeah, Steelers sweep the Ravens this year in a game that the Ravens really did not need to win.
Well, so here's the thing. I've got a little bit of a conspiracy theory on this.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that it's possible that Lamar might have greased the palm a little bit of Huntley to play bad to make sure that Lamar locked up the MVP vote. Because if Huntley went out there and played like the Pro Bowl Tyler Huntley that we've seen before, then it'd be like, oh, so maybe Lamar is an MVP because anybody can just win in this offense. So I think maybe there's a chance that he was just like, hey man, just play bad to make me look good.
I mean, whether that happened or not, I can see that's kind of one of those funny conspiracy theories. Last time the Steelers lost to the Ravens was like first part of last season. And it's been 3 in a row for the Steelers. But anyway, I actually had to go look that up. Anywho, Steelers got that and then needed a couple more things to happen. Really only needed one of 3 things to happen. And one of those things happened. The Jaguars lost to the Titans. And in fashion, Mike Vrabel's last act as the head coach of the Tennessee Titans was winning against the Jacksonville Jaguars so that the Steelers could make the playoffs. As news came out this morning that he was fired. And not to jump around too much here, but Black Monday has been upon us.
We can get to that. Yeah, we'll wrap that up.
We'll get to that after we get through some of these games here. But yeah, I mean, I was once again, Steelers are in the playoffs. It's just unbelievable that again, some of the teams that have done it in the past for the Steelers that have made it. I mean, I don't feel quite the same as the Steelers team that made it in as the last seed that had to go to Kansas City first, and we got just wiped off the face of the earth. We'll get to the playoff matchups. I'm not going to talk about that yet, but the fact that they made it, I'm happy. Now, did the Browns sit everybody? I didn't get to watch Bengals Browns at all.
Yeah. So they started Jeff Driscoll, who got there last week.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. They sat everybody they could. They ended up having to play a few starters just because they didn't have anybody else to play on they didn't have enough backups. But they generally didn't really play anybody of consequence. And yeah, I watched like the first quarter and was like, I don't really, I don't want to see this. So,
yeah, and it doesn't matter either. It's kind of like, hey, no one of importance gets severely injured, right?
Yeah, I mean the Bengals were playing to not get shut out in the division. They if they lost, they would have gone 0-6 against the divisional teams.
Yeah, which probably
crazy.
They probably would have been the first team to do that since what, like the winless Browns? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, probably.
To go completely winless in your division. I mean, that usually just doesn't happen because these divisions are they know each other so well. So,
well, I don't know who were the Panthers wins this year.
The Panthers I think took one against the Falcons, didn't they?
Did they? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that might have been the one the walk-off field goal.
Yep, they got when they won 9-7.
Okay.
I mean, you usually get, even if you're terrible, you usually get at least one in your division.
Yeah.
Typically
Um,
catch them on a bad day.
maybe not
Yo,
the Bears last year, maybe. I don't know.
again,
Either way.
I didn't see the
Um,
stat anywhere, which is why I'm just speculating. But
anyway.
take it this year. The Patriots went 4-13 to end the season, but they still beat the Bills this year. Like,
Yeah.
it's just one of those. It's one of those things. Your divisional games, you just, it's one of those things. But speaking of the Bears, I wanted to talk about that game because there was a lot riding for Chicago going into that game. Not necessarily for the Bears, like to make the playoffs or anything, but like Fields' legacy, because there was a situation. The Packers were in the same situation as last year, where
Mhm.
if they lost that game at home to a divisional opponent, they would have missed the playoffs. Which, admittedly, I was rooting for happening because of a friend of the show,
Yeah.
Josh, is a Bears fan, but also, um, Packers were able to get it done in a very kind of, sloppy game, I guess is the best way to put it. But
Yeah.
they do ultimately make it, which, there's just they're similar to the Steelers. They have a good nucleus, man. I mean, the Steelers to that division, or no, the Packers to that division are very similar to the Steelers' relationship in ours. You know, traditionally the team where their worst year, even in a situation where they don't have Aaron Rodgers anymore and everything else, Love gets them to the playoffs,
Yeah. I mean,
albeit at 9-8.
yeah, I've been sitting on the Jordan Love is trash take for like 3 years, and I was right for a while, and I mean he looks okay. So yeah, I mean the Packers definitely are in the same boat as the Steelers as a franchise, which is like they're never terrible.
Right.
Like they're always gonna be in there.
There's two more games I want to talk about because, well, okay, Rams were able to beat the 49ers on a day where, again, the Niners were sitting a lot of guys. Rams actually,
Mhm.
the we will get there when we talk about the playoffs here in a moment. The Rams matchup is something out of like a movie. I will say it's one
Yeah,
of.
yeah, yeah,
Well, let's get to that in a moment. But I wanted to talk about the game that actually did have implications. Later that evening, the Bills beat the Dolphins
yeah.
in a game where one of those games where Josh Allen did not play well, but the Bills collectively played just well enough to take it from the Dolphins. Uh, any
Yeah.
thoughts?
Um, I think that this game as a whole, I think really showed the limitations of Tua.
Mm.
And I think that this was more of like, okay, but like you still like you still need something a little bit better. Like there's a lot of people throwing around comparisons with McVay and Goff and McDaniels and Tua and saying like
Interesting.
the guy that has a quarterback that just isn't quite good enough, that he needs to find somebody like a veteran who's a little bit better. And I was actually talking to friend of the show Matt about this, and because just like we saw the meme and we were like, who would this even qualify for? Kirk Cousins, maybe.
Mm.
I don't know how that would work because I don't think they'd be able to afford him, hilariously enough.
Not only that,
But
do you want someone that old if you're McDaniel's? Like, I don't know. Like his system probably would be better with some, but that's what I think he can. That's his goal since he's been there. Since he's been very adamant about watching to his film, and I think he's trying to turn him into that guy. But he almost
yeah,
needs
I
someone who's
mean,
more mechanically just like a lot more sound, a little bit more proven. But do you go the veteran route, or do you try to turn someone like Tua into that? Hard to say, but
yeah, I mean, it's
among
very hard to say.
the young coaches in the NFL, I think he's definitely one of the rock stars. Same thing with D'Amico Ryans. We didn't talk about them, but Texans win their division outright. Uh, wow, a legacy of C.J. Stroud. This is going to be interesting, especially with any Ohio State fans that are also Browns fans this coming week. Um, with this, but
Mhm.
back to this game, I was admittedly rooting for the Dolphins simply because I wanted the Steelers to go to Arrowhead and not Buffalo. I mean, gonna be equally the way it is, but we were even talking in my chats into the evening and my friends and all that. I'm like, give me the Chiefs. Give me them and their ridiculous wide receivers. And catch a few. I mean, seriously, catch them on a day like that and everything. Um, but anyway, I think you're onto something there. I think you could see maybe you'll see more aggressive changes there in Miami quicker than we think. Um, Total side note.
Yeah, I don't know.
I did send you their fight song. And if you haven't heard it, Miami Dolphins fight song is fantastic. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, yeah.
It is really good. Like it's is it one of those like kind of cheesy NFL fight songs they play during games? Like, yes, but it's like it's like decisively the best one. I mean, it's like it's probably better than Fly Eagles Fly. Bear Down Chicago Bears is pretty good. Anything's better than the Ravens fight song, which was also the Colts fight song at one point. But yeah, Miami has the Dolphins, the greatest football team. It's so good. Anyway, so yeah, is it playoff time?
Yeah, we can get into that.
So your brackets, man. I was frustrated as we were queuing the show up. I don't like I'm having to go and actually Google like the brackets. There's no solid one, but I was able to find one just straight up on the like social media and all that stuff. Obviously the brackets everywhere, but like all of the outlets go out and they put their matchups up by like paragraph, right? Because it's like each beat writer's take on breaking down the matchups and everything else. But I do have it in front of me. Where would you like to start with this? Because we should just say who the wild card matchups are this weekend.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, we'll just start with the Ravens and Niners are the 1 seeds in the conferences, so
Yep.
we won't really be talking about them, but because they don't play till next week.
Not this week.
Then moving to the let's go ahead and go to the 2 versus 7 in the AFC. The Steelers are going to Buffalo by the Bills. The 2 versus 7 in the NFC. The Packers are visiting former Packers coach Mike McCarthy in Dallas. So Packers Cowboys. So that'll be an interesting storyline there. And then 3 versus 6 in the AFC is the Chiefs hosting the Dolphins. A lot of cold issues going to be coming into play there.
Yeah.
Dolphins it's going to be like 10 degrees in Kansas City, I think. And then 3 versus 6 in the NFC. Big storyline game. The Los Angeles Rams and Matthew Stafford are heading into Detroit to play the Lions.
I would argue that's the
Matthew Stafford.
I would argue that's the biggest storyline of the weekend going into it.
Yeah,
that is the biggest storyline. That's ridiculous that has happened. Yeah. Continue.
And then the 4 versus 5 matchup in the AFC is the Cleveland Browns going to Houston to play the Texans, and then the 4 versus 5 in the NFC is the Eagles going to Tampa Bay to play the Buccaneers.
I will say this too: there's a like in a universe where Deshaun Watson stayed healthy, and I suppose there'd be something about him returning to Houston, but the fact that it's going to be Flacco is honestly a bigger deal, just because of what if the Browns win, you know what the potential of that could be. But we're not going to talk about that potential because we'll have to see if it happens. So the wild card round is always fun. I don't. The one thing about your team making the playoffs, Casen, is you and I will be sitting here. I have to have a heart attack this weekend watching my team play in the playoffs.
Yeah,
and it could be a great time or just horrible the entire time. As I'm as and especially with the almost seemingly vendetta our show has had against the Bills. Of course, they're playing one of our teams in the first round of the playoffs. Of course they are. But that's going to make it way funnier if the Steelers somehow.
So for reference, the Browns Texans game is the first wildcard game, 4:30 on Saturday, and the Steelers Bills game is the first game on Sunday, 1
o'clock, right? Yeah.
I'm just so excited that this game is going to be the first playoff game. Just so excited.
Yeah. Well, hey, look at it this way, Casen. You don't have to wait around all weekend to potentially have your heart ripped out. It's
that's true.
And you and I will know what's going on by the kick, or no, we won't. I'll have to wait till Sunday, but at least going into Sunday evening, we'll know. I will say, unbiasedly, the game that I'm probably most excited to see is probably that Rams-Lions game, simply because you get Ford Field with their first home playoff game, I think, ever in that stadium. That one of the underrated home advantages in the NFL that has really shown out this year, proving again if the Lions were ever good, Detroit would be a madhouse to play in. It is.
I want to ask you a question.
Yes.
Have you seen the lines for these games?
No. And as a matter of
Don't look
fact,
them up. Don't look them up because I
don't
want
look
to play
them up.
guess the line.
Okay,
Guess the line.
guess the line. All right.
All right, we'll just start in order. Uh, we'll go Browns Texans. Guess the line.
Guess the line. Guess the line. I'm gonna say Browns 5.5.
Browns 2.5.
Okay. All right.
Dolphins Chiefs.
I'm gonna say Kansas City. Kansas City 3 points.
Kansas City 4.
Ooh, okay.
Close. Steelers Bills.
Okay, that one I think I saw earlier, but it was like this morning and it might have changed with the Watt news that TJ's not going to be playing in the game. So I'm going to go Bills. I'm going to go Bills 7.5.
It's Bills 10.
It's 10. Okay. I didn't know if they'd push it all the way to 10. I bet I think when I woke up this morning, it was like 9.5 and now it's 10 probably because of, yeah. All right.
Yeah. Packers Cowboys.
Oh man. See, I think the Cowboys are far and away better than the Packers. I'm going to say Cowboys, especially at home. I'm going to say Cowboys. I'm going to say Cowboys like 10.
Cowboys 7.5.
Wow, so that's the opposite. Okay, interesting.
I would agree that probably should be 10 and it could get up to 10, but yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. So Rams Lions.
Man, that I'm gonna I'm gonna say Detroit 2.5.
Detroit 3.
Ooh,
So
so
pretty close on that one.
I'm all right. I'm doing pretty well.
Eagles Bucks.
Now this one is interesting because this one's gonna trip me up because I they're in Tampa, correct?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Eagles 3.5 or 4.
Eagles 3.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Wow, that was good.
pretty close there. Pretty close.
That was pretty good. That was a good pop-up segment there, man. That was awesome.
So I say all that. So going back to Rams Lions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean there's a ton of it. I say all that basically to just show that like outside of the Steelers Bills game, it's very close, sort of kind of everywhere. At least perception wise. So it could be a very interesting wild card round. We could have none, but we could have a ton of upsets. Who knows?
It's hard to say just because um my gut says that there's going to be a team that gets hot that's hanging around that we are not necessarily expecting. And I said last week that the team I really don't want to play the most going into the playoffs is the Cleveland Browns. I'm very serious about that. Like, Steelers ended up making it, so it's like, of course, yeah, Steelers you don't really want to see either. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but everyone knows what the Steelers situation is. I mean, if Watt was playing, I'd be like, oh, we could probably grab one against the Bills. But without him playing, I'm leaning more towards the Bills. The Bills might cover, to be honest. But that being said, yeah, I'm with you. I really think that we could see a weird thing going on here. The one outcome I really don't want for the city of Detroit is for the Rams to somehow upset the Lions. The Lions cannot by any means let that happen.
Yeah. That's a concern. Do you want to talk about any other games, or do you want to pick them?
Let's pick them. Let's go ahead and pick them, and we'll only pick these. We won't speculate anything further.
No, yeah. Let's just pick the wild card.
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah. Let's do that.
Okay, so I guess let's just go back down in order.
We can go in order. I've got it in front of me.
We'll just start, I guess, with the Browns Texans game.
You go first. Actually, I'll go first because it's your favorite team. This is going to be interesting because it's kind of one of those situations of how ready is this Texans team? I mean, I really think that this year's been fun and everything, but I think they're a little ahead of schedule. CJ's played good. But at the end of the day, they're still 9-8, right? I mean, they just barely made it in there, winning their not that great of a division.
I mean, no, they're 10-7.
They're 10-7, yes.
The CJ did miss a couple games though, so they could have, won a couple more games if he didn't get a concussion earlier. But Um,
I
yeah.
here, well, if I was bottom line here, I am going to give this one to the Browns. I think it's a close game, but I ultimately think Flacco is playing really well right now, and I think his experience in the playoffs really just wills them to at least a victory in their wild card. I really think that this Cleveland team, barring they play the way they need to be playing and are capable of it, I just think that the road Cleveland has had to go through has been harder than Houston's, and that's what's going to win the day for Cleveland. I really believe that.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I'm trying to be very optimistic about this, but there's a lot of things sitting in the back of my head that I'm very concerned about. One of which is this is a very interesting scenario where this is actually one of the few teams who played the Joe Flacco Browns. They just played each other 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago.
That's right.
And that game, they didn't have CJ Stroud. And so we haven't played CJ. They have played Flacco. And so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, they sort of have the edge on that to like be able to scheme up against what we're doing right now. And we can't.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, I'm just fully preparing for there be a time when Flacco comes back down to earth. I mean, I'm trying to be optimistic, but there's just a lot of stuff I'm like afraid of because it's just like the narrative is sitting there for me to be just so afraid. Like
Yeah.
DJ Stroud lights the world on fire, playoffs. I mean, it's just it's a lot, and I'm very very afraid of what's gonna happen. So I'm choosing to go with the narrative of uh their offensive line can't block Miles Garrett. Miles Garrett, is going to go off. Darius Smith is going to go off. We're going to get a lot of pressure on CJ. He's going to be very uncomfortable. And the the Texans secondary still can't compete against Amari Cooper and David Njoku. So I'm going to have to go ahead and save Browns for the sake of my own sanity. But we'll see what happens.
That's cool. And I was going to think to myself, maybe we should just give keys to the game, but ours is a recorded show, so I don't think there's any reason why we can't just go ahead and pick our own favorite teams games as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So we both have the Browns. Basically closer game than last time. The Browns won 36-22. If you're wondering.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next we got Miami at Kansas City that evening on Saturday, 8:00.
So I'll go ahead and go and start here. So
Yeah, go ahead.
there was the big question between the Dolphins and the Bills game over, who would be playing the Chiefs. I'm pretty sure it was basically winner or I'm pretty sure it was like loser of that game went to Arrowhead, right? Or was that not?
I believe that was the
I
case.
think that was
Yeah.
essentially how that went down.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have picked the Bills against the Chiefs because we've seen all the issues with the Chiefs this year. And I definitely would have probably ended up picking the Bills again because they already played, they already beat them the
They
first
won
time,
there. Yep.
and I think that definitely they have been playing even better after that, and so I would have said that. However, this is a very, I would say, not tough Dolphins team playing against uh I would say a relatively good defensively Chiefs team
Mm.
in what's supposed to be very cold temperatures that they're not prepared for. So I'm going to go ahead and say the Chiefs.
I'm also going to pick the Chiefs, but if this was one of those upsets, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Mainly because the
Yeah,
Dolphins have been really sneaky in the playoffs. If you recall, they were a couple of plays away from beating the Bills in Buffalo last playoffs. Um,
that
they
is
they
true.
they
Yeah.
showed that they could really flip a switch when it came to, and they didn't even have Tua for that game, if I recall. So yeah,
Yeah,
they
I think
had
that was Skylar Thompson.
yeah, they had Skylar Thompson or someone else in there. So they looked great, and I think this is going to show what coaching can play a role. If they can go to a very cold Arrowhead and look really good and make some plays down the stretch, I could see them stealing one. That said, I do think the Chiefs get it done. I will say if this game was in Miami, I might just pick the Dolphins outright. But
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
yeah,
like
yeah.
legit. If this was the other way around, I'd be like, I think the Chiefs could stumble big time here. That being said, they're not going to. I think the Chiefs win, and I think it's closer, and Miami looks better in this game than we are giving them credit, maybe. So
I
yeah.
don't disagree with that at all. Yeah.
Up next, oh my goodness. Up next is 1 o'clock on Sunday, the 14th. Pittsburgh goes to Buffalo. You know, it's funny, Casen. You know how we were talking about fight songs and everything. Every single year that the Steelers make the playoffs, you've heard the "Here We Go Steelers" song. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, like Pittsburgh's going to the Super Bowl. That song. Um, the updated version of it actually came out today, and what's funny is it doesn't mention any quarterbacks. It doesn't mention Pickens either. It's mostly defensive like players and stuff like that. In the
I did actually listen to it,
yeah,
and it was I think it referenced Deontay Johnson, Fryermuth, and Jalen Warren.
yeah, Jalen Warren, Najee, of course, uh, Najee Harris going to knock you around. Here we go. It's like I love it. It's just because every time they do this, I will say this. I don't recall ever hearing an updated version of it this soon. I'm like, guys, can we win a playoff game before we do the we're going to the Super Bowl thing? But regardless, you gotta love the like I'm saying, that honestly is just a Steeler mentality, though, like of your fandom, especially folks from Pittsburgh. Like, we never think we're a playoff berth away from another Super Bowl win, and that's, I think, what your, fan base should have. I mean, in my lifetime, I saw the Steelers go as the lowest seed in the AFC and beat everybody on their way to a Super Bowl. So that I saw that happen. And then I saw the Packers do the same thing in the NFC and beat us in the Super Bowl a couple
Yeah.
years, several years later. That being said, if I'm being totally honest with myself, the fact that TJ Watt's not playing is going to be the difference. I just think that,
Yeah.
like, if he was playing, I'd be sitting here trying to make a case for the Steelers, and probably even still, I would pick the Bills to win just because of the season that they both had. I think the Bills win, and I honestly think the Bills are going to cover. Like the last time I saw the Steelers go up there last year, we got obliterated. Now this is not that team, but at the same time, and the Bills were not last year's team in the regular season. That being said, I just think the absence of TJ Watt, I'm going to be very surprised if we're not sitting here and we're not down 3 touchdowns going into the third or fourth. I mean,
Well, I mean, and again, I mean, I sort of said the opposite when I was talking about Joe Flacco, but like
yeah,
the Steelers are in this position because Mason Rudolph actually has been playing well,
yeah, that's
and like
true.
that's probably going to change at some point. Like
It's more
history.
likely. Yeah, it's more likely that. I mean, I could see a situation where, like, here, trying to make a case, right? I could see a situation where they just let Rudolph cook and just go throw it to Pickens a million times. And let's be real, the Bills' pass defense is rather shaky, so
Mhm.
I could see us getting like a few really big plays and like down the stretch and everything, and like we're in a position to win it. And yeah, you don't have T.J. Watt, but like you do have Highsmith. You got guys on the other side who can get in there and 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 make Josh Allen throw a stupid pass here or there. But I just think this has the makings of, yeah, Steelers, thanks for coming out, but maybe not a blowout, but hey, we can hang the hat on the fact that we did make this team made the playoffs again. But again, we keep saying this team, right? So I got the
Mhm.
Bills. I hate to pick against my own team, but I'm not going to be a homer here. I do this show with you. I'm going to be objective here. Bills win.
Yeah, I would agree. The Bills.
Yeah, for the same reasons, or
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I mean, I would say for essentially the same reason. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
I would be a lot more concerned about Josh's turnovers if TJ was playing. That like I think TJ would definitely probably even get a sack fumble.
oh
But it's
yeah,
just kind of like without TJ, you can kind of focus uh on Hayward and sort of limit that a little bit. Um, but yeah, Josh is going to have to play much better than he did against the Dolphins, though.
that is
He's
true. I mean, I could
going to
see
have
a
to play much
situation.
better.
I mean, I think Josh Allen and that offense can play a bad game and still beat the Steelers team without TJ Watt. I would not think that if TJ was playing. Uh, it really is a bummer that we don't get the TJ Watt, Josh Allen showdown kind of thing. We don't get that like kind of dynamic of the pocket collapsing and stuff like that. But regardless, the game will be what it'll be. And yeah, probably a Bills win, but I'll be rooting for the Steelers. So
Yeah.
up next, we got Green Bay at Dallas at 4:30. You can go first.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a big storyline as well. You have the Packers who fired Mike McCarthy 2018, I think. And yeah, I definitely think that the Cowboys are very good, and I think the Packers are extremely mid and are lucky to be here. So yeah, I think that this is a similar situation where thanks for coming out, Packers. Cowboys by yeah, they'll definitely cover. Yeah, I'd say 10 at least.
See, maybe I'll echo some stuff you said here in the last couple of picks. The you expect Love to come back down at some point, right? You know, like or show out in some way of like show how good and or bad he really is. I don't know, but this Cowboys team has been pretty for real this year, and the fact that they're at home too. I mean, I just think it's going to take one of these really big top dogs in the NFC in the next round in the rounds to take them down if they're going to get taken down. This Packers team is not going to be the team to do it. Now, I will say this: crazy stuff tends to happen when the Packers and Cowboys meet in the playoffs, like historically. Uh, you know, the Dak the Dez Bryant no catch, and then the other
Yeah.
there's other times like way in the past when the Cowboys and Packers have both been good, where like crazy stuff happens in the game. That could happen again, which would be super fun because we're not fans of those teams. So
Mhm.
that said, I got the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys do it. They cover, and I wouldn't even be surprised if this gets ugly. But
Yeah, I mean there
yeah,
was a lot of like conversation about the Packers just because they beat the Lions on Thanksgiving and then they uh beat the Chiefs, but then they lost to the Giants, which I'm pretty sure that was yeah, they lost to Tommy DeVito Giants.
then they
And then
lost to the Buccaneers, and then they won
they lost
out
to the
against
Bears. Yeah,
Carol.
and so it's just kind of like I think they got very lucky against the teams that should have beaten them,
Mm-hmm.
and they managed to beat the worst team in the league and the Nick Mullins Vikings. So it's just kind of like okay, like
And then the Bears they struggled against.
and then the
So
Bears. Yeah, which that was just a bad game.
yeah,
Like
like they didn't.
I think it was like was it like super gross in Green Bay? I think it was like really wet and stuff if I
I think the
remember.
field was wet because of the previous days, but during the game, I don't know if it rained or not. I wouldn't watch the whole thing, but I will say that neither team looked good at all. I was like,
Yeah.
these are
Yeah.
pro teams. Like, gosh,
I mean, yeah, I mean you put the Cowboys that we saw against the Commanders and like in Dallas inside the dome, it's going to be no contest. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think they can shut that down at
I
all.
I'll just put it this way: I'd be shocked if that one was an upset. I'd be like, wow,
Yeah.
and it would be hilarious because it's the Cowboys.
Then again, I mean, the Cowboys lost to the Cardinals, so
Hey, Anyway, the Cardinals were playing better down the stretch, though. I'll go ahead and just put this out there: Los Angeles at Detroit, 8 o'clock that night. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the most watched playoff game out of all of these.
oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's Sunday. It's the Sunday night game. It's this matchup. Kudos to the NFL for making it the Sunday night
Mhm.
game. Who do you got, man?
I got the Rams.
Ooh, man,
I mean, I really really hate to say it for friend of the show James and all the other Lions fans. But I, the Rams have, kind of come back into their own lately. The Lions, their defense is still really bad. And I mean, you put, you know, Stafford to Puka to Cup, Kyron Williams. I mean, I think the Rams offense is as good as it, had been the last couple of years. And it's just like this is one of those games where it's just like, I mean, normally, like if this was any other year, you'd be like, okay, yeah, like they're gonna roll the Lions, and so it's just, I don't trust the Lions defense enough to be able to shut that
mm,
down, because I think Stafford loves Detroit, but I think he still holds a grudge the fact that they gave up on him. I mean, he was probably, also not crying about leaving, but I think that he was a little annoyed that was kind of the way that went down.
I've been waiting to point this out, but this game is like the culmination that trade for the two guys was leading to several years ago. The
I
Goff
mean, I
for
think
Stafford.
Goff is also probably mad. Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going with this is I think Goff feels the same way about McVay in that all of those dudes in the locker room with him say, we are not letting those guys go. Like we finally made it for the playoffs under this, the Dan Campbell era. We are not letting these dudes come in here and beat us in Detroit in this way. That's why I think the Lions win a very close game. I mean, I think this is going to be a instant classic. This could be a really, really fun, good game. The atmosphere is going to be insane. I think the Lions win, but they win like by a field goal. Like
I'm not even saying I trust the Rams defense either. So I'm hoping this is a shootout. That would be really fun if this is a high scoring affair.
That would be awesome.
if this is like the Rams Chiefs game, that was like a total of like 90 points or whatever.
Yeah, like the one out in LA, like 52 to 51. Yeah. That thing. Yeah. That could be crazy. I mean, I like to think that in the playoffs you won't see a score like that, but honestly, the way the game is now, you definitely could. They're indoors too. It's going to be good conditions. I could definitely see something like that happen. And you got two quarterbacks who want to show out given the circumstances. So, I will say one thing: if the Rams do win, I don't know what that does to his legacy in Detroit. I'd almost want to poll fans and be like, "How do you feel about him now?" Because ultimately, look what happened. But best Lions team most people our age have ever seen by a lot. I mean, most people much older than us have ever seen even. So, but okay, you got the Lions, or I got the Lions, you got the Rams. So we'll see what happens. And then finally, Philadelphia at Tampa Bay, the Monday night game. See, I think if you're a fan of one of these two teams, you're waiting around all weekend. It's like, oh, Monday night.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got the Buccaneers.
Okay.
You're
noticing I'm not reacting the same way.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I think that look, the Eagles are really not playing their best football right now. They basically almost lost out after being 10-1 at one point.
Yeah.
And then they've had a lot of issues. Internally, there's been a lot of problems. I mean, Nick Sirianni could legitimately be fired after going to the playoffs because he basically he's basically the NFL version of Ryan Day, where he was given a Maserati and turned it into a Pontiac. He was given the keys to everything, and then Shane Steichen. I mean, obviously losing coordinators is hard, but clearly we know the team. Like we know how that team got to the Super Bowl now. Like Shane Steichen is an incredible offensive coach. And that was essentially the whole reason they were able to win those games last year.
Well, they got. Well, I think he got the most out of Jalen Hurts. I think you're starting to see him kind of come back down to earth. I mean, think about it. He was being looked at as one of the elites, especially after that Bills win. I was like, man, this Eagles team is like cooking with gas, and I'm just shocked at how badly they've fallen apart. Like that. I mean, they've looked like completely incompetent in playing football the last month and change, and it's been so much a precipitous drop, and literally nothing's gotten any better to the point where, oh yeah, I could totally see them going in and laying an egg in Tampa, which is why I will also pick the Buccaneers. Here's your chance, Eagles, to finally show me and Casen, and quite frankly, everyone on earth, that this team isn't capital F frauds, which is
let's recap how this went down.
Yeah,
they beat the Chiefs in Kansas City. They beat the Bills at home in overtime.
Yeah.
And they got killed and looked like garbage against the Niners, got killed and looked like garbage against the Cowboys. They looked like garbage and lost to the Seahawks. They barely beat and looked like garbage against the Giants. They lost and looked very bad against the Cardinals.
Looked like garbage.
and then they lost and looked like garbage to the Giants. So it's just like they won in there, but they still look like garbage. So it's just kind of like they have not looked good in a month and a half.
Yeah.
And it's clear that people sort of figured out everything that they want to do, along with the fact, by the way, that they like demoted Sean Desai and like it's now Matt Patricia calling the plays on defense.
Oh yeah, that's like,
and it's like like that's it was like literally I think after the Niners game, like they were 10-1, then lost to the Niners, and then they like demoted Sean Desai. It was like, what?
I got to give a shout out. Hopefully, I mean, I know he listens. I shout out to a friend of the show, James, for he was the only NFC fan I heard talking to me and otherwise around that Dallas win, that Kansas City win, and that Buffalo win. He kept saying mechanically the Eagles still have a lot wrong. Like they're getting lucky here, they're getting lucky here. You can make the argument they got lucky and beat the Bills, really.
Yeah,
you really can. That could have
definitely.
started then. And it was still one of those things where, yeah, but there's still much of the season left. Like, let's see what happens. The fact that, like, after he was preaching so hard about that to me and others, they completely fell off a cliff. I'm like, hey, that's one of those genius football takes, man. But you gotta give credit where it's due. It's like you were ahead of the game on that one. So stick taps.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it talk about a fall from grace. I mean,
it's grounds.
A year ago, Nick
Yeah.
Sirianni was king in Philly, and now every single Philly fan wants him gone.
Like it's been this is like this could be, and I hate to say this, but this could be similar to the collapse that the Red Sox had across when they were like leading their division and they like almost lost out in September and they completely cleaned house. It was such a precipitous drop. I believe they went from completely out of the postseason, and yeah, in the AL East that year, and like Valentine was the manager or something like that. Different sport, yeah, but this has been such a bad collapse that like I could see something similar happen if they like get blown out against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Even if they lose the game, I still could see something like that happening. If they get like destroyed in front of the whole world in Monday Night Football, it's gonna be like, wow, like this is. I don't think you're gonna. I don't think any moves off the table at that point.
I mean, this is like sort of shocking to even say, just because I mean, I don't think they would do it, but like if they go down, and I'd say if they look bad and lose to the Buccaneers, I would not be surprised if everybody, including Howie, is gone.
They lose and look like garbage against the Buccaneers.
I mean, obviously, it's sort of like Howie's generally been pretty good, but it's just like he's the one, like he's the one who sort of he paid Jalen Hurts all this money, and clearly he's not as good as they thought he was.
Yeah, like the deal is starting to really raise some eyebrows too now. It's like, maybe this wasn't a good. Maybe we did pay him just on one season, as I've heard people talk. Like,
I mean, and it's like now the one thing that they do very well, the tush push, is like going to be banned. So it's like, what do you?
Yeah, what do you do? So there's your predictions.
I mean, along with the fact of like, I mean, maybe not Howie, just because like the roster itself is still generally good, and like he's still good at his job from like drafting and signing and stuff, because you still have like all of this talent on like wide receivers and the defense and stuff.
It's just like how has this happened so drastically?
Like that coaching staff literally has like turned diamonds into coal. Like I don't quite understand. Yeah, I mean, I don't understand how anybody could wreck this much of a Maserati of a roster. Like it's insane.
How'd you screw this up so hard in one season, boys? Like, come on. And so there you go. I guess one little prediction I'll have is I can see the two biggest headline generating games I can see coming out of the first week are the Detroit Los Angeles matchup and the Houston Cleveland matchup, mainly because let's just face it, let's just say this because it's pretty cool. Those are two franchises who are looking pretty darn good going into the playoffs for the first time I can remember, maybe ever, in both their histories going into the same postseason. And regardless of the result of either game, there's going to be huge things to say. Um, Probably a bigger
Yeah.
deal with the Detroit game, but
Yeah.
I mean, if what I picked were to happen, it would be like, okay, so Cleveland's headed to, I don't know, you guys would be headed to like Buffalo or something. I don't know. It
What
all
you
depends on the
picked.
seed. It all depends on the seeds. So you don't have to remember exactly who I picked right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a chance we'd go to Baltimore. There's
Oh
a
yeah, that's
chance
right.
the Bills.
Oh yeah, you guys. I think you
Yeah,
guys would be the
yeah.
lowest seed left. That's actually one of the things I was going to talk about. If the Steelers won, they'd be going to Baltimore. I'm pretty sure. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, if you're a Ravens fan,
Yeah, yeah.
what's going through your head if the Steelers win? Because I'm gonna be sitting here so arrogant saying, okay, Steelers might actually make it to at least the AFC Championship now.
It's basically like the equivalent of when the Jags did, and it's like what? And they got annihilated by the Pats.
I'm Well, to be fair, they got annihilated down the stretch. There's parts of that game where they were pretty close, but that Blake Bortles team,
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it would be that. Like I don't know, we go into Arrowhead or something. Hey, maybe we're going to Miami. You never know. Uh, or maybe we're going to Cleveland. How crazy would that be?
In the AFC Championship game.
Yes, because that's the only way it would be in Cleveland. There's no way it can be in Pittsburgh. So
Yeah,
I don't know,
that's
man.
crazy.
Isn't it fun to speculate? This is great.
Yeah, that'd be outrageous. That'd be
Anyway,
outrageous.
it'd be outrageous. He says, yes, it would be. So anyway, let us know your picks out there. Who you guys think, you folks think is going to win? If you want to give full picks, you pick some of the games, whatever. Those of you that are friends and listeners of the show ordinarily do anyway. So that being said, Casen, you wanna of the weeks some stuff?
Yeah. I will open up with shock of the week. Goes to we kind of hinted at it earlier. The Tennessee Titans just up and fired Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, they did.
In a move that was quite honestly so controversial that principal owner Amy Shunk had to essentially give like a 5-minute video explaining why she felt like this was necessary. I didn't watch all of it, but it essentially, from my understanding, it comes down to the fact of like they didn't want to continue being stagnant, and there was maybe somebody else that they wanted to get, and they didn't want to miss their chance of getting them by waiting to trade him. But
yeah, that's right. They were looking
I mean, it's sort of the thing where with like Derek, I would say, a theme with the Titans franchise. It's kind of like the thing with Derrick Henry, where it's just kind of like both sides just agreed it was probably time to move on because for some reason it was just like the relationship was just sort of done. Like apparently Vrabel had literally nothing to do with the GM hiring last year. And so the GM did not have any relationship with him at all. So
here's the thing. You call this a shock of the week. I don't know what of the week I'll call it. But I'll say this: it's for me, it's a decision that I think is more defensible than Titans fans or others might think. Because think about it, they're trending the wrong way. The last couple seasons, they've done nothing but decline since their playoff loss against the Bengals like 2 years ago, and now, yes, like you just said it. Now there's a new GM who didn't bring Vrabel in charge. In a lot of ways, it kind of just feels like the change, like not even the changing of the guard. It feels like, yeah, let's get my people in here. New. I don't know. Maybe it's more justifiable in this sport, but a new face on the bench. I mean, unless they're going to try to throw everything at trying to get Belichick or something. But
I guess, but like I'm just saying from the approach of like they were completely irrelevant and mediocre for how long, and then Vrabel makes them actually good and relevant,
right?
And then they don't have a quarterback, which isn't Vrabel's fault, and you're confused as to why he's not winning games,
right?
Like I feel like this lays at the feet of the roster construction rather than Vrabel is more so what I'm saying.
And it's almost like you wish you could give him one
Vrabel,
more.
Vrabel was able to beat the Jags when they were playing for their season.
You're giving and also it's almost like the ownership was talked into it over the course of yesterday. Like the fact that it didn't happen till Tuesday shows me that it's sort of like, okay, So you can tell that they were really teetering back and forth. Like it was probably discussed all day yesterday among
Yeah.
people in charge, stakeholders, other people. And at the end of the day, the folks, leaning towards getting rid of him won out, essentially. Um, I will say this: I think Vrabel's still an incredible football dude, and I wouldn't be surprised if he is right back on a sideline somewhere else next year.
Oh,
That
100%. I
that
mean,
dude is that dude
if
is.
as long as he wants to coach next year, he's going to be on a sideline somewhere.
I wouldn't be
I
surprised if
mean,
he's hired this week. I'm dead serious.
oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
he's
I
on the
mean,
phone right now. His agent and other
yes,
people. Like,
yes.
where are we going next?
There's a lot of talk about how over the course of the last couple days, the the postseason conversation with Belichick and Kraft went with, okay, we'll give you a year to kind of retool your staff, and you can have another year. But I mean, Vrabel sitting out there available, does that change Robert Kraft's decision making? Another huge fit that I've seen tossed around. Vrabel gets to the Chargers.
If
He
I
makes
were,
the
I
Chargers
was gonna
tough.
say, if I'm the Chargers, I'm calling him right now. I am saying, hey,
Yeah,
what? I know it's a move all the way across side of the country. You would have all the stuff you've never consistently had: a good quarterback, like a half decent, defensive roster. Like there's tangibles in place already for him to succeed. Like he wasn't able to succeed in Nashville immediately out there.
yeah, yeah.
So I mean, plus, he's a younger, cool coach. I think they're a staff that really needs that. A guy who's a proven football dude, eager with a bunch of young guys to
The
like
problem with the
yeah,
Chargers is that they're not defensively sound and they're not tough.
right.
Vrabel would fix both of those immediately.
Immediately. And it like give him the keys, give him the war room, let him go in and let's plot a draft strategy right now. Let's get on it.
Yeah.
I just yeah, maybe it's a good thing for both sides that Vrabes is out of there. It's like, hey, he'll go
I
to
mean,
somewhere. He'll continue to have
I
success.
get it. I get it from the Titans' perspective of like
Same.
you just to me that tells me they had somebody in mind,
Right.
and they wanted to go a direction. I To me, so the GM that they hired probably had a candidate they really wanted. They really wanted this person, and they were like, okay, let's just do it so we can get this person in the building and not miss our chance.
And also,
So,
and also, if you wait around to trade Vrabel, you might end up kind of messing with his career a little bit if you're really trying to get rid of him.
yeah,
It's almost a courtesy. Hey, if you're going to move on from me, cut me right now so that
well,
I can go.
now they have to pay him. So
Well, exactly. He gets the buyout and he gets to go somewhere else immediately if he wants to, unless he wants to take a year off of coaching. A lot of
yeah.
guys do that, but wait for another job to open up
So
that's better.
so
But
the
whatever.
Yeah. So then the other firings that occurred on Black Monday,
Of the
Ron
week.
Rivera. Yeah. The Ron Rivera, shocking, not really. And Arthur Smith of the Falcons, which
They didn't even
that conversation, we didn't even get into that
they,
story.
they didn't even they didn't even wait till later in the morning. Midnight hit on Monday and he's like fired
Literally
him
like,
immediately.
yeah. Rap Sheet and Schefter tweeted that out at like 12:01 a.m. on Monday. Yeah. Yeah.
Fired immediately. Which I felt okay. My controversial play of the week, the fact that the Saints went for that, got the touchdown off of the faking of the victory formation
Yeah.
to run up the score against the Falcons, which say what you will. I mean, I've also heard people say, is Jameis Winston actually just a really great teammate for that? I mean, hey, if you're going to give your teammate one more accolade and a touchdown at the expense of a division rival, a lot of guys might do it, right? I will say that it's become way more. It became way more controversial than I think it would have been because of Smith's reaction at the end of the game, rightfully so. And then the head coach of the Saints was like, "Dude, I did not tell them to do that. Like, I understand you being upset." It's even made to look worse that he got fired literally hours later.
Yeah.
It's like, they didn't fire him because of that play, but it's like, it's a rough few hours to go from, dude, like, I'm like, maybe he even knew it. Like, he's like, dude, I'm like on the hot seat and you do that to me. Like, I don't know. I get where everyone is coming from.
Let me make sure this didn't happen while we were on the air because
Oh, snap. Yeah. That moment where
okay.
we're live on air and
No. Okay. So my should have been fired of the week. Sorry, dude. I don't care. Dennis Allen. Like, the Saints are completely middling. They're so bad to watch. But the only reason they're not firing him is because they're in complete like a disaster of a cap situation. So it's like, why would anybody want the
Yeah,
job?
yeah.
But so hilarious timing on this. I don't know if you heard of it. Pardon my take had Jimbo on Friday, and
Yeah.
so he was talking about Jameis, and he was saying that he and Jameis worked fairly collaboratively on like plays, and at the end of the day, whenever Jimbo was like, "Sorry, Jameis, but this is the play," he'd be like, "Yep, got it, coach. You're the man. Got it." And so that to me tells me that Jameis does not respect Dennis Allen at all at all. And the other teammates don't, and his teammates don't either. Like Dennis Allen, I don't even understand how he got the job. Like it was just like
Hey, we
Peyton
need to.
left, and it was like
Well,
here.
they're just trying to. They're just trying to get through their cap situation, like you said. But
But yeah, I mean that's just such a disaster. I
well,
mean,
I have an of the week, and really it goes to it's a little bit of an of the season. My curse of the week slash curse of the season. The terrible towel struck again.
yeah,
And the
yeah.
Steelers hilariously rubbed the Jaguars' face in it like nothing else. I love whenever teams will do this to each other on social media and stuff, because what's it not there for if not to have fun like this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you don't know what I'm referring to, it is well documented, at least among Yinzers and Steeler fans alike, that anytime the terrible towel has been disrespected for the most part throughout its existence since the 70s, uh, if it's disrespected by an opposing team in a significant game, or like the Steelers lose or something like that, typically that comes back to bite that team at some point later on. It's like the spirit of Myron Cope, like, it sabotages them in some
Mm-hmm.
way. Well, this year it was the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were very disrespectful to multiple fans, and the terrible towel, ripping them out of like fans' hands and stuff, wiping their shoes with them. And amazingly, there's that slow mo of Trevor Lawrence doing the twirl wrongly, I'll admit, poorly, on his way off the field after they won against the Jaguars, beat the Steelers early this year. And when you know it, you look like garbage and lost to the Titans to not make the playoffs. And guess who took your playoff spot? Your boys, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So anyway,
Yeah.
don't do it, okay? And if for no other reason, I'll just say this: do I actually believe in curses? No. There's always a reason something did or didn't happen. That, like, curses don't exist in sports. I will say this: hey, maybe not do something like that to like a franchise who historically is much better than you, and also, I know you've had recent wins against the Steelers, but hey, maybe not do something to give one bulletin board material and also social media fodder if you bomb out of the playoffs and look terrible down the stretch, to where every single fan base in the league, but also especially the one that you spurned, is going to be there to make fun of you. Anyway,
I mean, the other thing though too is like, where in the world do you think you earn the right to be acting like that?
oh, dude, I mean,
You only won a playoff game last year because the Chargers had the worst collapse in the history of collapses.
on the history of the NFL playoffs. Yeah,
I mean, otherwise
one of them.
you wouldn't have even won a game in the playoffs. Like, come on,
I
like
don't know, man.
that like
There are certain teams in the past. I mean, there was a year where the Titans like did it. Similar thing happened to them. The most famous example was when TJ Hushmanzada rubbed his feet. He cleaned his cleats off with a terrible towel. When the Bengals won the division the year that the Steelers eliminated them from the playoffs and won the Super Bowl. That's like probably the most famous example of it, because that was like right before the Steelers had to win out for the rest of the year. So it was like 4 weeks till the end of the season, and then the Steelers literally didn't lose again the rest of the year. So
yeah.
after losing the division, so it's like, just don't do it. But here's the other thing: I know because of that story, none of y'all in the division would do that to a terrible towel, because you're really gonna like, you mess with the bull, you're really gonna mess with the bull, the horns on this bull. You guys all know better, being in the division with the Steelers.
Well,
So like,
I can tell you who didn't know better.
oh boy.
And that was a certain former Browns head coach by the name of Freddie Kitchens. But
Oh yeah,
we'll go.
that's right. That's another one.
We'll skip that one.
Yeah, just I don't know. Part of it's but my point is part of it is a respect thing in the AFC North. You know, there's a respect among all four franchises there too. And again, just I don't need to if I'm a Browns fan, I don't need you to be twirling their ridiculous towel. Just beat them on the field, please.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, that's one of my of the weeks. I guess my upset of the week is that Eagles loss, but that's like kind of boring. We've just dogged the Eagles a little bit, deservedly so. But the Cardinals kind of turned it on there towards down the stretch. I mean, they handed some teams some pretty bad losses, including the Steelers, down the stretch in the season there. You got another one? I have one that's out of sports.
Yeah, you can. Well, I have a dog of the week that's out of sports.
Let's hear yours. I want to hear that
more.
So
my dog of the week goes to whoever the pilot of that Alaskan Airlines flight was.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's wow. Yes. Stick taps. Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you don't know what we're referring to, there's an Alaska airline flight. Door came off right after takeoff. Nightmare fuel, quite frankly. Even if you're not afraid of flying, I am not. Even if you're not, that's one of the worst things that can happen. So, caused the grounding of various aircrafts like it. So seriously, hats off to crew, pilot, everyone. Quite frankly, passengers involved, and glad everyone's okay. Anything more to say on that case?
No.
Hey, just be safe out there, y'all. Okay, shifting to a pop culture thing. I think this is a terrible decision of the week. Why are we like foregoing a season 4 of Mandalorian and now turning that into a movie? You sent me that news today, and I'm like, why are we doing this? I mean, this might be one of these phantom Star Wars projects that's floated around that there's all these movies that they've talked about doing that it didn't happen, and then there's other ones now they've talked about. Some of those guaranteed will not happen. Universally, I've seen most people today be like me and say, "Why? I'd rather just have a season 4. Why do we need a movie of these two guys?" Like,
well, I will say I don't. I think it will probably be good. I mean, it's Favreau. I mean, you get a condensed 2.5 hour movie without all the filler. So I mean,
sure.
I think it will probably end up being good. My guess, money.
Well, you know what?
To be perfectly honest, they keep making these very expensive Mandalorian shows for free on Disney Plus. I mean, they need to start selling tickets.
And let's be real, Disney's famously had a pretty dud of a year when it comes to most of its major projects in terms of what they used to be and well documented. I mean, I'm still one of these people like we talked about who, like, if you're really going on the internet and saying like, oh, Disney's in huge trouble, you and I have never really bought into that. Like, no, they aren't. Like, at the end of the day, like, the finances are there. They can afford a year like this, and they've been able to for a long time. It's just we're so used to the quality being high. Let's be real. Mando, Din Djarin, and Grogu are probably the two most popular characters, original characters that this Disney Star Wars has come up with, right? So
yeah, I speaking from like sort of a financial perspective,
yeah,
from how I know businesses operate, Lucasfilm itself has not put out a very good movie in a long time.
No.
And so Disney as a whole, finances are generally okay, but we've talked about how ESPN finances have struggled, Lucasfilm finances have struggled. So I think this is a Lucasfilm needs a big box office hit to recoup a lot of money and to be able to continue funding the studio. I mean, to be honest,
we weren't talking like we do this like on this show every week in those days, but what's the last universally really beloved Lucasfilm film? Rogue One. I mean, because Rogue One came out after Force Awakens.
I was gonna say Force Awakens because I wouldn't even say Rogue One.
So you don't even think Rogue One? Okay, that's fair. That's a totally fair take.
Rogue. I don't think Rogue. I mean, I don't know the numbers on that, but I don't. I don't think Rogue One had quite the box office success that it's a good movie, and I think it was critically received, and I think people eventually went and saw it and thought it was okay.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was like a huge box office hit. Like I don't think it made $1 billion, did it?
No, I don't think. No, I don't think it made $1 billion. I think the only modern one to make $1 billion was Force Awakens. I think Last Jedi. I'm not going to look it up right now. Last Jedi, I think did, but either way, I hear what you mean. I do agree, but we can most people agree that Last Jedi most people didn't like. So, um, I think you're right though. I think this might be their best chance among the established characters they have to, and maybe Filoni wants to use it as their arc into the big movie with everybody, right? The Ahsoka storylines
Okay,
and all that stuff.
Rogue One did make $1 billion, but either way,
Okay, either
so
way,
I guess we could say probably Rogue One.
sure. Critically and financially good. So
Yeah,
I mean, I think we can agree on that. Regardless, they need a W like it's nothing else. Like on the movie
yeah.
side, they need a dub, and I think it's also because they don't really know movie wise what direction to take the for Star Wars franchise. I mean, I think that's just obvious. To be the
Hmm.
case. So yeah, I mean, you laying it out like that makes it make more sense to me.
I mean, from a business perspective, like I mean, for anybody that doesn't know, like I work in business, and so I approaching this from a business side can sit here at the table and say, like if I was the CFO of Lucasfilm, I'd be like what are we doing putting the stuff on streaming for free for? Like, like
Everything
like
can't be.
like like this season of Mandalorian cost $200 million to make, and you can watch all of it for free for $10 on Disney Plus. Like, what are we doing?
If I
Like,
was
what are we
naming
doing?
the if I was naming the movie, I'd be like here we go again. Welcome back to the adventures of Mando and Baby Yoda, because that's
Yeah,
what
I
they
mean,
because that's what Mando is.
I mean that's objectively just what I'm saying is that
So good.
the TV Disney Plus side of Lucasfilm being so much better than the movie side has caused a pretty I don't know, but I would assume it would cause a pretty big financial problem because
Well,
there's
well,
only so much money from Disney Plus to go around.
well, right, and it doesn't help that these companies don't release their streaming numbers, right? To like the dollar amount of what it
Yeah.
actually equates, but from most experts, as we've talked about on this show and elsewhere, all kind of agree that like most streaming services are bleeding money right now. So
Yeah.
it's like, well, yeah, of course they are. I will say, my anticipated show of the week is definitely Echo. I believe is it all out today or tonight or something? The
I
ninth.
believe tonight. Yes, I believe tonight.
Cool, because I was actually looking at that earlier, and I was like, "Oh, I'm like, if any part of that is out, maybe I'll watch one episode of it." But I'm gonna try to obviously watch all of it before our next show. I'll try my absolute best. But even if it's only a little bit, we'll coordinate on it. But
Let me make sure I get this right.
yes,
Uh, so the episodes are to be released. Yeah, I guess all of it tonight. Okay, I thought there was going to be a couple staggered, but there's 5 episodes that come out tonight.
dope. Tonight, so they'll be out by the time this show's out.
Yeah.
They're out now. Basically, you can go
Yep.
watch Echo, and we'll be watching it at some point, and then definitely we'll check it out given
Hmm.
in given due time. I don't have any other of the weeks because it like not enough stuff has happened since our last show.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that's about
Since I talked to you like
all I
4 days ago.
yeah. Yeah.
Man,
But I think that's fine. We covered a lot. We had playoffs to talk about. And I think we'll have plenty to discuss once the wild card round of the playoffs is over.
absolutely. I mean, let us know your thoughts on the wild card out there, folks. Enjoy your wild card weekend. I mean, whether your team's in the playoffs or not,
Mhm.
I enjoy the games. This is we're reaching that point of the year that's kind of like a little bit of a bummer for like a lot of folks because like it's like now we decreased the amount of football per week. Now college football is over. I'm admittedly always kind of
Mhm.
bummed when that happens. Uh, which I guess going forward, college football would still be going on like another week. Um, technically.
Well, another 2 weeks.
Yeah, another 2 weeks. So I guess that's a thing. So anyway, not talking about that's a year from now. but
Yeah.
but yeah, and then it's like then the Super Bowl happens, and then February, I
Hmm.
swear, is at times sort of a slog, and then you hit March, where this is March, right? So
Yeah.
we'll have more content and things like that to talk about. But trust me when I say that Casen and I, you and I have no shortage of stuff to talk about, bro.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, is that all? Any final thoughts, man?
Uh,
Just go Browns.
Go Browns. Go Browns.
Go Browns. Here we go, Steelers. We'll be here to talk to you about it on the other side. But until then, this is Kellan,
This is Casen.
and we'll see you at the next stop. Good luck this weekend.